Hi, so today I want to look at some things that I built in Framer. I want you to try to learn how to use variations or variants and the particular animation type within Framer that Framer allows you to do called scroll on variants, which is very cool and really useful for making nice animations within websites. So let's just jump in and look at the website that I created. This took all of about a day, much less than that. It took a couple of hours to put this together using Framer's built-in tools. And what's nice about this otherwise super simple website is when I scroll, the little icon at the top left-hand corner jumps around a little bit. There's also this little 3D object within the scene that I'll look at in another video. But for now, what I want to focus on is discussing how we can make these scroll on variant animations in our Framer websites. Okay, so let's look at Framer itself and see how we can go about building these kinds of things. I'm going to use this completely empty template here in Framer and build something approximately similar. The first thing you want to do is click on where it says desktop here and have a look at how the page is currently set up, because there are a few things that we want to make sure are in place before we do anything else to make sure that everything is going to work okay. So if you click on where it says desktop, which is just so that you know that means that this is what the web page is going to look like when it's being accessed by a desktop computer. And what's cool about Framer, because it's built on the React.js framework, you can set it up so that it responds to lots of different devices. But we're going to focus on the desktop for right now. And you'll see that this is set up to work with a machine that has a screen width of 1200 pixels by 1080 pixels. So kind of your average laptop screen these days. What is interesting about it is the overflow is currently set to visible, and that's how we want it to appear. I will toggle it between visible and hidden in a little while, just so that you can see what the big impact of that is. But we're going to set this to visible because we want to have some elements of our website that stay in place and some other elements that don't stay in place. To jump right into making the website kind of come to life, I'm going to just use Framer's built-in sections, and I'm probably going to add about 3 of those because I like them. The sections kind of look like PowerPoint pages to me, so as a lecturer, I feel very comfortable there. And because this is just a tutorial, it doesn't really matter what's here or what's not. And then I'm also going to add a navigation bar. Now, I will be customizing this as I go along. I'm probably not going to use the navigation bar preset too much, but it is good to get me started with a navigation bar like this so far, so that when I customize it, it makes my life a little bit easier. Now, I'm going to press play up in the top right hand corner there, and I'm going to scroll, and you're going to see that at the moment the navigation bar scrolls with everything else, and that isn't what we want. We want it to stay in place. The reason it's not staying in place right now is because its position, so you can see here I've gone to my layers panel. I've got a pages panel, an assets panel, and a layers panel. So I've gone to my layers panel, and if I click on my navigation component, in my navigation component, it has got a position, and that position is currently set to relative. I want it to be set to sticky. And if I press play, you'll see that it now stays in place. Now, you might be experiencing some issues if you've created some sections and you've created your navigation bar on top. It's possible that it's not staying in place even though you set it to sticky. And that could be because your desktop web page in general could still have hidden overflow, or maybe it's returned itself back to hidden overflow that can happen sometimes because you change something and it's necessary to avoid the web page collapsing. So just be careful with that. If I do set that to hidden, you'll notice that that behavior comes back. So we need to make sure that the page as a whole has got visible overflow. There's also scroll overflow, which can kind of work, but we're going to just use visible to keep our life simple now. Now, the next thing I want to set up is that rotating logo, that rotating icon. But if I try to click on this navigation preset here, you'll see that I don't actually have control over the current logo that they have. So what I'm going to do is jump into the Assets tab, have a look at the navigation preset, and then I'm going to customize it myself by removing the logo that they had in place. You just highlight that, press delete, and then I want to make an icon of my own. Now, to practice, I have set up a little flame here using the emojis, but I'm going to do that again just so that I can walk through all of the steps. And this is really important. You want to make sure that you create a new component because we're going to be manipulating this component from the Layers tab. If you just try to change what's in the navigation preset, it's going to be more difficult or maybe even impossible to change how that logo reacts. So I'm going to call this flame because I know what I'm going to create. And in my flame component, I have got a primary variant that I'm able to use. Now, when you set this up, it is possible that it will come with a fill in place. And the fill is just a background. For our purposes, we don't want a background, but you might find that in some cases you do want backgrounds. But if you do have a fill, get rid of it for now. What I'm then going to do is insert an icon from the Tweemoji library. And if I just go ahead and click Tweemoji, it's going to give me the flame as a preset. I could also use the heart or the laughing or whatever, but I'm going to use the flame for right now because I think it looks kind of okay as like a company logo. I've picked up the flame and put it right in the middle of the first variant, my primary variant here. But what I'm going to do is further customize this a little bit. If I click on the Layers panel here, this is kind of interesting because if you pay really close attention, you'll see that I'm currently in the flame object, so to speak. So when I click on the Layers panel here, this isn't the Layers panel of my whole web page. This is just the layer panel for my flame component, okay? So within this, clicking on variant 1, paying some attention to the position and size, you can see that it comes up as a fixed 110 by 120 fixed size. And maybe that could work okay in a web page if you know exactly what size something that you need, but that doesn't work great for what I'm trying to do right now. So I want to make sure that my variant is just fit to the content that I've created, and that's going to help make sure that everything stays right in the center when I use this from now on. Okay, so I have that Tweemoji. Its position is relative, and I'm going to make sure that it is the whole thing is fit to content, which will work well. Okay, so that should play nicely if I put it onto a web page. But for now, I'm going to create some more variants. And just to make some notable changes between these, I will open up the Transforms panel, and I'm going to rotate the second variant 180 degrees. And I'm going to set up the third gradient, or the third variant, with a rotation of 359 degrees. Why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing this so that when I scroll through my web page, it looks like it's turning in a big circle, leaving it at 359 so that it feels more sort of seamless. Okay, so those are my variants set up. And what that means is when I scroll through my web page in Framer, when different sections of the website are visible, I'm going to be able to tell Framer that I wanted to choose between and play between these different variants on the web page itself. So what I'll do for now is jump back to my home page. I'm going to look at the navigation bar that is there, that navigation preset. And for now, I'm going to get rid of that preset version. And instead, I'm going to just throw on the version of the navigation bar that I made with a flame icon in place. But what I'll do is just get rid of that flame icon for now. And I will instead use this navigation bar and add in my flame icon separately to see what happens. Okay, and so what's happened here is now I have my navigation bar without an icon, and I have the flame icon there separately, and you'll notice that they're stacking on top of each other. And that's not really what we want. We want these to be on one nice row. So what I'm going to do is right click on the flame icon, and I'm going to say add stack. Now that's created a place where if I bunch objects together, they can behave nicely and kind of be in the same space in a more cooperative way. And those stacks are really important, and you can use stacks or grids if you're more comfortable with things like CSS. But you want to pay attention to the orientation of your stack, making sure that you use horizontals where it's important and use verticals where it makes sense, okay? So I'm going to click on my navigation without the flame, the navigation component that I made, and I'll click and drag it into this stack underneath the flame, and that creates what we need. I'll resize this slightly so that it looks good. Great. So now I have kind of what I'm looking for. I've got my navigation bar component set up. Now it's just a preset, so it doesn't actually do anything when you click on it. But you can make a preset really easily using the same kind of techniques that we're using today. But you'll notice that when I scroll around, we're back to that old problem. But hopefully you know how to fix that now. What we want to do is make sure that overflow is still visible on our desktop, and it is. Then click on this stack, and we're going to change the stack that we've created, which we could rename actually, just to make sure that we don't get confused. Let's call this navigation stack. And we'll change that to be sticky. Make sure that the components within it are set to be relative to the sticky stack. The sticky stack. And now it stays in place, which is great. That's kind of what we were looking for. However, I have now noticed that we don't have an adequate backdrop for the stack, so I'm going to add a white fill into the stack itself, and luckily that's something that we can do without a problem. So, very nice. Now, how do we get this flame to rotate? We get the flame to rotate by telling the web page, by telling Framer, that there needs to be 3 different sections to the website. And when one of those sections is visible, which is to say when it's in the center of the screen, we want the flame icon to change what it's doing in some way. So what we need to do is configure Framer to make sure that all of that is set up correctly. The first thing we want to do is click on our first section here, scroll down to where it says scroll section, and we want to configure this to make sure that it is our first scroll section. We'll then click on the second scroll section and name that number 2, and click on the third scroll section and change that to be number 3. Okay, cool. Now, when we go to our flame component, what I can do is press the plus icon on the effects section and set up a scroll variant animation. For the trigger on this, we're going to use the section in view setting. We're going to make sure that it replays so that we can scroll up and down and it will repeat as needed. And we're going to say on section 1, we're going to set the variant to be number 1. So basically there's no change when section 1 is in view. Then we're going to say when section 2 is visible, we want to play variant 2. And finally, when section 3 is visible, set it to variant 3. Okay, now all being well, that should work. Yeah. And we've got a nice dancing flame that behaves when we scroll. Okay. So that's the scroll variant animation that makes use of our mouse input. So I hope that was helpful, and if you have any feedback or if there's anything else that you want to ask about, be sure to let me know. Otherwise, talk to you soon.